Hi, it's Miriam with Engadget, and this here is the Galaxy Nexus. It's the HSPA Plus version, unlocked. So I wanted to give you a quick tour of the device, walk you around. As you can see, there's a beautiful 4.65-inch HD Super AMOLED display. This is a 720 by 1280 pixel display. I'll try to get it to come a little closer to you guys so you can see how incredibly beautiful this display is. Viewing angles, of course, are really amazing. This is, after all, a Super AMOLED class display. And the blacks are really blacks, colors are popping, the brightness is about a third right now, so it gives you an idea. So that's the first thing you'll notice about the Galaxy Nexus. It is extremely beautiful display right there in the middle staring at you. The next thing you'll notice is that there's no physical buttons. Instead, you have these three software-based keys, and to show you that they go away, I'm just going to start the camera. As you can see, this is the camera and they are gone. So they also change orientation, etc. So there's no physical keys anymore for Android. Let's turn it over and have a quick look at the back. In the back here you'll find a 5-megapixel autofocus camera with LED flash, and a very similar battery cover to what we had on the Galaxy S2. It's got a little pattern to it and it peels off like so, revealing a NFC enabled battery. This is a 1750 milliamp hour battery, as you can see here down there. And of course there's a SIM card here. This is an HSPA Plus device. It's a pentaband device. It's the first Android phone with 5 3G bands, meaning that you can actually use it both on AT&T and T-Mobile. I'll put the cover back on right now, and you'll see it's a little tricky to put back on. It's not the easiest thing in the world. So you kind of have to run your fingers along like this until everything pops in place. And then you're pretty much golden. In the back as well is a speaker. You can see it here. The Samsung logo, Google logo. I'll give you a little close-up of the 5-megapixel autofocus camera so you can have a look at it. There's a little spot here to pry the battery cover off like I did. And you'll notice right there is a microphone, actually, a secondary microphone. The bottom here, you'll notice there is a micro USB charged data port, primary microphone, and a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. On the right hand side, you have these 3 gold contacts here, presumably for some kind of dock that we don't have our hands on yet. And then there's a power lock key here. And on the other side, on the left hand side, you have the volume rocker right there. Of course, there's nothing on top. This is exactly the same layout as the Nexus S. And as you can see here, there's really nothing in the front other than the earpiece up there, and the front-facing camera here is 1.3 megapixel, and some sensors. So that gives you a quick tour of the phone hardware. I'm going to turn it back on so you can see the boot animation. That's what it looks like when it starts up. And then I'll do some quick size comparisons with other devices. You get a feel for what it looks like. Quick note, so what's powering this is a Texas Instrument OMAP 1.2 gigahertz dual core CPU. This is a similar CPU as what we found on the Droid Razr, but it's actually not quite the same. It's got 1 gig of RAM, and so as you can see here, this is the boot animation. And here you can see the software keys appearing and the lock screen. We're about to pop onto HSPA Plus here. There's a little H appearing and notifications popping up. So I'm going to give you a tour of the software in a separate video. I wanted to quickly do some size comparisons and give you a feel for what else is in store. Another thing I didn't mention, this has 16 gigabytes of built-in storage, no micro SD card here, and because like Honeycomb Ice Cream Sandwich uses a new file system, they cannot support USB mass storage on internal storage. So you can only have USB mass storage with removable media, and this phone obviously doesn't have removable media, so you now have to use MTP or PTP to transfer media content to and from the device. So this is a big deal for those of you who rely on USB mass storage. Once again, give you a quick look at the outside before I pull some other phones out of my little box here. So, Galaxy Nexus. The first thing you'll want to know probably is how does it compare to the Nexus S? Here is the Nexus S, and as you can see, this is a very large phone, all things considered. 4.65-inch screen versus 4.0 on the Nexus S, and it's of course wide VGA, 800 by 480, quite the difference. If the camera will focus here, hopefully you can have a look at the difference in resolution and quality of the fonts here. Hopefully this is pretty clear. And but as you can see, generally speaking, it's pretty much the same design. The curved screen, if I put them on top of one another, you'll really notice the curved screen on both of them. And then in the back, you get the general same layout here. Google, Samsung, and the camera, speakers in a different place. You got the little bump here on both of them. So one of the things that we liked about the Nexus S, and which you also enjoy about the Galaxy Nexus, is they really both feel great in hand. Despite the size of this phone, it's really quite nice in hand. So don't let the size bug you too much. It's also very thin, as you can see. It's about less than 9 millimeters thin. So another phone you'll probably want to compare this to is the iPhone 4 and iPhone 4S. So this is the iPhone 4, and as you can see here, quite a difference in size. The iPhone 4S is obviously similar and almost identical. For 3.5-inch screen versus 4.65 inches. IPS panel, 960 by 540 versus 1280 by 768. So that's what it looks like. Popping them around, here's the difference in size between these two, and then stacking them together, maybe with some of the controls visible. You'll notice that, again, the curved screen, you might be able to see my fingers back there through the phones. It's thin. The iPhone 4 is not a particularly thick device, so this gives you a good perspective. The next one I want to compare it to is kind of like the grandfather, or rather parent, of the Galaxy Nexus, and that's the Galaxy S2. They both basically are cut from a very similar cloth. Different CPUs, different screens, different cameras, but overall they are of that generation of Samsung devices that really started the dual-core revolution. So you have the 4.3-inch global Galaxy S2 here on the right, 800 by 480 display versus the HD display here, and then this is what it looks like from the back. As you can see, the patterned back cover is that I mentioned earlier. 8 megapixels versus 5, and again, this is one of the big issues with I feel with the Galaxy Nexus, is that the camera is good, but it's not quite up to the brilliance of the rest of the phone. This 8 megapixel autofocus sensor here on the Galaxy S2, which is also on a whole bunch of Galaxy S2 variants, as well as the Galaxy Note, is such a benchmark of a sensor and lens that it's really disappointing that Google and Samsung decided to choose a lesser 5 megapixel sensor, and the results really do show that it's not as good. So that's one area that we wish could be improved upon. Let's have thickness comparison. As we know, the Galaxy S2 is a pretty thin phone, so you can see it here, clearly thin. But the Nexus is, other than the bump down here, is holding its own quite well. So it's a bit bigger, of course. And then I wanted to show you another phone that has a pretty large display, and that's the HTC Titan. It's the Windows Phone device. So here they are, side by side. You have the Titan on the right and the Galaxy Nexus on the left. As you can clearly see, they're almost the same size. The Titan's a bit wider, but a bit shorter in height. and does feel bigger and look bigger, even though it's not really that much bigger. 4.7-inch wide VGA 800 by 480 display versus the incredible HD display. This is also a TFT panel. It's a good one, but you can see a notable difference. It's what they look like from the back. You can see they're almost the same size, and of course the Titan is a little thicker, but not by much. So that gives you comparison with that phone. There's two more that I think are pretty significant. This is the HSPA Plus unlocked version of the Galaxy Nexus, but there will be an LT CDMA version on Verizon, and Verizon currently has two pretty significant phones available. So I wanted to give you a chance to see the Galaxy Nexus side by side with, first of all, the Droid Razr. So here's the Droid Razr, and as you can see, it's a big phone, despite the fact it's only a 4.3-inch display. There's a lot of bezel around the screen of the Razr, and of course it's not the best display. It's a pen-tile display, just like the Nexus, but it's QHD, and it's unfortunately the font rendering is somehow odd because you can see a lot of jagged edges. But thickness obviously is something that you guys will be interested in about. So here it is. The Razr is a very, very thin phone. As you can see, it's actually probably better that I swap this over to show you. Right here we are. The Razr is about 7 and something millimeters, whereas the Nexus is about 8 point something. They're very close, but the Razr is definitely thinner. Almost the same footprint though. This is what they look like from the back. So there you have this comparison. And the last one, of course, on Verizon that I thought would be really nice to compare it to is the Resound. So here is the HTC Resound, and it's got a 4.3-inch HD display as well, 1280 by 720 pixels. So it's a very fair comparison. The difference obviously is AMOLED pen-tile versus RGB non-pen-tile TFT panel. So maybe getting them a little closer might give you a better idea of the difference here. They're both super sharp, but unfortunately TFT just isn't quite as exciting. Now in this light, you know, there is starting to get a little dark, and you can't really see the issues with the viewing angle and brightness as much as you do in daylight, in bright daylight. But there's definitely something to be said here about the AMOLED being the winner despite the pen-tile. So thickness-wise, of course, this is not very fair. The Resound is a pretty thick phone, despite the fact that it feels really nice in the hand. As you can see, it's a significant difference here. And of course, looking at them from the back, they look like that. You get the Beats Audio logo here on the HTC. So the Razr and the Resound are both going to get Ice Cream Sandwich sometime in the new year. And obviously, Ice Cream Sandwich is the big major news on this device. So I'm going to make a separate video where I talk about the software, but I wanted to give you a rundown of the hardware, and this is it. The Galaxy Nexus HSPA Plus unlocked version, a beautiful phone, possibly the best phone on the market right now. The camera could be better. It'd be lovely if we had a non-pen-tile display. The materials and build quality are kind of typical Samsung and could be better, but really this is an impressive piece of hardware. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And so there you have it. One last thing, the curved display is actually not Gorilla Glass. It is a tempered glass of some kind, but don't expect it to be quite as resilient, just like the Nexus S, as a Gorilla Glass covered device. And so yeah, that's pretty much sums up the Galaxy Nexus hardware tour. Cheers!